and welcome to Top of the Funnel, the series where conversations about content begin. And today we have with us Mr. Karan Kumar of DLF, and we'll jump straight into it. And I would love for you to tell us, Karan, about your journey so far and what you're handling at DLF, and then we get into the deeper kind of nuances of your career so far and the role of content in it.
Thank you, Natasha. It's absolute pleasure to be a part of your platform. Um, Great opportunity for me to share and reminisce actually on some of my experiences as well. Um, at DLF currently, I've been around for a little over a year, close to 15 months. I head marketing as Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for the residential business, which means that everything that we construct and goes into making a home all over the country, across projects, across segments, across cities, is what I head. As part of that exercise, one takes care of fundamentally three parts of marketing. One, of course, is the pre-launch, pre-sales, you know, the pre-marketing bit. Then, of course, the launch and everything that goes with making a launch successful. And thereafter, what's called sustenance marketing in the real estate parlance, which is, marketing projects that have been launched and which still have a certain amount of residual inventory to kind of sell offload. So that's what I do. Very enjoyable.
So that actually brings me to my next question. You moved from Fab India to DLF, right? So that's a massive transition, completely new industry. What made you move, and how is marketing different there, and how is it different here?
So yeah, great question. See, in the 20 odd years that I've been around, I've done about 16 and a half years at ITC, which is where I first joined straight from campus. And in ITC as well, during the time that I've spent there, I worked across various businesses, various brands, some new nascent emerging businesses, some older, more mature businesses. So I worked across, business and product groups like tobacco, like lifestyle and retailing, like stationery products for kids and adults, packaged foods. From there, the move to Fab India was, shall I say, a relatively smoother one because one had a context of retail. I think when I moved to DLF, as I mentioned earlier, real estate is not something that I was familiar with at all. And therefore, a lot of people would consider that to be a fairly bold move, a fairly challenging move. And it was. It was. In all fairness, it was. But I think what really drove me into that decision was again, this certain hunger that I think all of us as business leaders should possess, but a certain hunger to scale the next height, to figure out what new and what is more difficult to be done, which hasn't been done till now, and to try and demystify a challenge and to make it work for you. Do things that you've done in the past, but bring them to a new context and make it work for the new context.
For me, certain words really resonate when you talk about real estate and marketing. And that's one word. There's one word that you use repeatedly, right? Which is trust. Trust at another level altogether, because you're looking at homes, people building homes, people buying homes, and it's a huge transaction that you're asking people to make. Um, and then the role of storytelling that comes in. It is such an emotional. It's an emotional appeal. At the end of the day, you can't call it a transactional, even though it is a transaction. And that's what I would kind of love to know from you. What is marketing in real estate? And then when we try and narrow it down, these buzzwords that we hear all the time around storytelling and content, what does that mean now in this circumstance for you?
See, great question, and obviously very pertinent question to this conversation. The point is this, that if you think that storytelling is needed to sell a pack of 5 rupee biscuit, sorry, 5 rupee biscuit pack, or if you think storytelling is needed to sell 10 rupee bag of chips, you obviously need storytelling to sell a product which is 2.5 crores or 3 crores or 30 crores or 50 crores or 25 lakhs, the kind of ticket values that we deal with, right? So the role for storytelling, I think, continues to remain an extremely relevant role in the context of real estate as well, given the fact that your ticket value is the highest that you'd probably end up spending on any single product in your life. Second, perhaps, is probably going to be buying an expensive automobile or an expensive car. But beyond that, I think the most that one ends up spending money on is in buying your own piece of real estate. Uh, so if storytelling is needed to sell biscuits and chips, storytelling is obviously needed to sell real estate as well. It's only very counterintuitive. What does change, of course, is the fact that when people are looking at products of a certain ticket value, uh, and forget ticket value, when people are looking at products for in certain contexts of certain industries, the stories they want to hear are different from, let's say, stories they want to hear for products in another kind of a category or industry. And you want to know about the product that you want to buy, the not just the product you want to buy in terms of the hardscape of the product, in terms of how many bedrooms and what square feet and what size, and which location and what micro market, and whether it's going to be ground floor or the 14th floor. But I think you're invested to know more about what will come with the product, uh, around the product when you buy the product. So, what kind of community would I be living in? What kind of habitation will be something that one is looking at? What kind of neighbors will we have? What kind of amenities? What kind of services that will come when I buy the product? What is going to be the overall upgrade to my lifestyle when I move into this kind of a product? Who are going to be my friends, families, neighbors surrounding me? What's going to be my accessibility to people outside that microsystem? So I'm saying transport related, locational and connectivity related matters, so on and so forth. So these are the kind of things that you want to hear about, which is different from the kind of things, for example, when you want to hear about when you're buying a pack of biscuits, right? Uh, and stories that need to be told are stories that need to be told, therefore addressing these particular aspects, informing, educating, having a very honest and transparent dialogue, um, without making any kind of overstatements, or reporting any kind of factual inaccuracies. I think that's the kind of stories that you need to tell. That's the kind of conversations that you need to have.
How marketing is structured for you at DLF? How have you structured it? And within that, do you have someone handling content exclusively, or is it something that runs across the entire department? And what is the role that content essentially plays?
So over the last year, 15 months that I've been around, obviously I told you that one's been undertaking this exercise to restructure the department, and put down a clearer, sharper vision for it. But what we've done is fundamentally structure the marketing department into two different islands, as it were, right? One island is very typically an island which is represented by the brand management team, which has the brand managers, marketing managers, or group marketing managers, or group brand managers, whichever way you want to call them, who are very clearly and very directly mapped to individual projects, individual sales teams members. And their job is to clearly understand the requirements and the imperatives of the sales teams, and to ensure that we have a fairly comprehensive input package for both customers and trade, for us to be able to realize the kind of sales velocity and the kind of intentions that we have. But this would be a set of people who are, your pure play brand managers in an FMCG kind of an environment as well, right? That's one part of the marketing team. The other part of the marketing team, or the other island of the marketing team, is what we've now started hiring, and we're happy to state that got a lot of them on board, are individuals who represent certain domain expertise beyond a generalist brand manager role. So somebody who is a specialist in content, somebody who is a specialist in performance marketing, somebody who is a specialist in media and PR, somebody who's a specialist, let's say, in the events and in the brand alliances space, so on and so forth. So these are people who are specialists, not necessarily from a real estate background. They come, but they are specialists, and they are, let's say, islands of excellence in their own respective areas. And these people are people who service uh, brand managers as they would service any kind of a external customer. So for them, the brand manager is the customer. The brand manager comes to them with a problem, and they need to provide a solution for. So there is somebody who looks specifically after digital performance. There's somebody who looks after social content. Somebody who looks after media and PR, and they kind of service the brand managers, as it were, as I mentioned earlier, as customers.
Now, if we were to pull back, and you've been a marketer for the longest time, um, I'd love to know how far you see content has come so far in the marketing function, and 5, 6, 7 years down the line, specific to real estate, where do you see it going? What are the bets you would want to place? What would you want to experiment with? So past, future.
So I think content obviously has matured. It's matured at multiple levels. It's matured at the levels of people who create content, and they've started creating content which is far more mature, far more better production content. And it's also matured from the point of view of the expectation of the marketers have from content. It's no longer, just make me a advertising film for 30 seconds. That is also a form of content. But now marketers and business leaders have also experimented with other formats of content. And one of those formats that always is often talked about is the OTT format, where that you have long format or long form content which is coming across. Specifically there, I think what the Mutual Funds Federation of India, or whatever that body is called, they had done some content which was on OTT in the form of a series, and the fundamental premise was basically to educate people about mutual funds as a product, which is a very difficult product to know if you're not interested in that kind of a product category at all. Uh, so I think that was one great example, and I'm sure that's only the beginning. But there's one great example of how content is matured and how content is becoming more engaging and more educative, is even in the longer formats of it being played out on the OTT platforms. I think for real estate as well, and you know, at some levels, I don't see real estate being hugely different from some of the other categories. For real estate as well, I think there are going to be conversations around the product, around the community, around the habitation, about the location, all of which will be anchored through content. Uh, there will also be conversations around the regulatory frameworks, government guidelines. RERA, for example, is an example that I gave earlier, and conversations around that again through various forms of content. So I think as an industry, it's for us practitioners in the real estate space to push the boundaries and create as much content as we can create on some of these areas and some of these conversation points. There's a huge hunger for it. People want to know more. People want to hear more. People want to have a longer, honest conversation. It's not something that the industry has been known for in the past decades, but I
And
think it'll
also
augur well for the industry to move in that direction.
I think also the customer is changing, right? I'm sure you're seeing that the customer wants to be so much better informed, and especially
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
and just for that sake, I think content becomes so important. That
no, no,
education.
absolutely. I think the customer across product categories, not just real estate, but I think customer across product categories is becoming more inquisitive, as he or she should rightly be. So the customer is becoming more inquisitive, customer is becoming more exacting, customer is becoming more judging. Customer is also massively connected in the social networks. So conversations and referrals and affirmations from friends and family and social cohorts becomes very important. People want to hear, people want to read reviews much more than, let's say, they wanted to read reviews 10 years ago. So all of that plays into the need for conversations and the need for content, the need for content which is honest. I can't help but keep repeating this over and over again. Honest, truthful, authentic content.
I've been following you on LinkedIn and seeing that there are a lot of awards that DLF keeps winning for their marketing, their digital campaigns, and their content campaigns. So I'd love for you to talk me through one or two of your nice big campaigns that you been successful. And then obviously tell me why you think they were a success.
I think we have a very talented team, both internally and externally, that we work with. By externally, I mean my set of extended agency partners. And I think some of the campaigns that we've done, and one particular one, which also earned certain recognitions, was a campaign around the concept called DLF Cares. And DLF Cares was a campaign which was a multi-platform campaign. And by multi-platform, I mean it wasn't just a social or a digital campaign, but it was also an on-ground campaign, where the entire aspect of engaging your community and taking care of your community played out at both a social level and at a physical community level. Community management often gets reduced only to the concept of social communities and social community management, right? But community management is a big responsibility for our kind of an industry, when you have thousands of people living on campus, where you have their children and their parents, the elderly and the young, living on campus. And what happens to them at the time when things go south, when there's a pandemic, when there's anxiety? How do you service their needs? How do you make them remain mentally and physically challenged, happy, exercised? And I think what DLF Cares as a campaign did was, of course, a whole lot of content that was provided on social platforms, but also a whole lot of people who were made to stay on campus to take care of the communities that they were serving. One of our campuses, we almost had 450 odd people who were on the campus, not going in and out of the gates during a period of 4 to 6 months, to take care of what people needed to be done in terms of sanitization, in terms of safety measures, in terms of common areas being cleaned, lift lobbies, leave alone, of course, your basic essential requirements of electricity, water, plumbing, horticulture, so on and so forth. So I think that was a campaign which worked out very well at multiple levels. And because it worked out very well at multiple levels, obviously it led to a whole lot of advocacy and positive conversations around the brand. And that advocacy and positive conversations around the brand actually also led into conversions or revenue generation. So from a effectiveness point of view, from a ROI point of view, and for me, ROI is a simple definition of the impact on cash flows. All other metrics of ROI, I don't really consider when it comes to, uh, you know, campaign performance. From a ROI point of view, from a conversion into sales point of view, new customer acquisition point of view, the revenue that we've been able to close during those months point of view, I think it's worked out pretty well.
Very interesting. I think it keeps coming back to building trust and having an authentic voice is what kind of comes out at me, through this conversation. Just quickly, one more thing, Karan, you touched upon distribution and you spoke about DLF Care. So I just quickly want your thoughts on how you plan content distribution and how, when you're doing a campaign, is there a thought process, something that you can share around content distribution? Because that is the place most people struggle. You create content, you create great content, but unless it gets discovered, nobody knows it exists. So
So for me, the point of view is slightly different. I don't create content and then I figure out where to distribute it. I think which is what typically a lot of people make as a common mistake. They first create an idea, they create a content, and then they scratch their heads to try and figure out how to distribute it. For me, it works the other way around. I first figure out what kind of platforms I want to be active on, given that each platform has a certain ability to deliver a certain set of results. And then for each one of those platforms, how do you create content which is relevant and unique for that platform to deliver? So for me, the distribution part actually precedes the content creation part.
yeah, makes perfect sense. Okay, so I think we can close the conversation here. It was great, very insightful for me. Exactly what I asked what I needed to know. I'll be very honest, and I'm hoping that a lot of people will have the same questions. Thank you so much, Karan,
My pleasure.
for taking
My
out
pleasure.
this time.
My
Uh,
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me as part of this platform. I hope the conversation that we have makes sense to a lot of your readers, listeners, followers as well.
yeah, I'm
And
sure.
if at any point of time, there's anything specific that you want me to comment on specifically or clarify, I'm more than happy to do that.